A very good afternoon. Welcome along to Jeddah for round 4 of the 2026 ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. It is time for free practice 2 in the glorious sunshine. 30 degrees is the air temperature at this early stage of the weekend. We've got qualifying and, of course, we've got the first of 2 races here today. Hugely excited to bring you the action under the floodlights here in Jeddah. But, of course, for free practice 2, as you can see, it's still daylight. It is still absolutely baking outside, and I'm sure that's going to make things very interesting as we go into qualifying later on this morning. My name is Tom Brooks. Alongside me, James Rossiter and Karun Chandok here to guide you through the action. Max Günther was quickest in FP1 yesterday, James. But in FP2, what should we be expecting? More of the Max Günther show or the Porsches? Because they were looking pretty handy with Wehrlein as well as Jake Dennis up there.
Well, they've all had a night to spend time with the engineers, going through all of the data that they've accumulated from the session. However, the track conditions are so different than what they're going to experience later on for qualifying and for the race that really I think this session is just going to be about testing the things that they could learn last night and that they've implemented and hoping that they're going in the right direction.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Here is Eduardo Mortara, fresh off the back of a double points finish for the Mahindra team in Miami a couple of weeks ago. They've had great pace so far this season, Karun, the Mahindra team. Can they do it, though? Can they get themselves onto the podium here this weekend? Because it sort of eluded them in the first few rounds.
Well, they were on the podium in Mexico, weren't they? And Mortara was second there. Yeah. So I think they've clearly shown, as you say, the pace, the potential. They arguably in Brazil should have had 2 cars on the podium and threw it away. So I think they're in the fight.
Yeah, this is Nick Castille, championship leader then for the Citroën Racing team. Emphatic victory also in Mexico City. Last time out, though, in Miami, complete 0-0. There was a lot of talk about tyre pressures and about setup of the car, and a poor qualifying for Castille put him on the back foot. They went the wrong way with setup, and it just didn't work in the race at all. He was nowhere. Yeah,
for context, Miami was freezing cold, raining, drizzling. It was not at all like Miami weather or what anyone would expect. And they gambled on the track drying out for the race, and they just got completely caught out, and Nick had absolutely no pace at all in that race.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also for the Cupra Kiro team, you see Pepe Marti, another points finish for him, 2 out of 3 races so far in the Spaniard's rookie season. Compare that to his teammate Dan Tickton, who's had no points finishes so far in season 12. Needs a strong weekend here. Not necessarily his own doing. There's been factors outside of his control at the first couple of weekends, but he would love to be able to get his points tally off to a start here in Jeddah. And of course this weekend also sees the return of pit boost for the first time since the end of London last year. But of course a new element to this for this season, Karun, is that there's only 1 attack mode now available in the races. How do you think that's going to play in terms of strategy now?
I think in some ways it makes it less confusing, and that's the reason it's been changed, right? It makes the race less confusing for everyone watching and trying to follow. In a normal Formula E race, when we don't have the pit boost, you get 2 opportunities where the order gets jumbled up with the 2 attack modes. With a pit boost race, you'll still have 2 opportunities to jumble up the order, except one will be the pit boost, which will separate the pack out, and then one, of course, will be the attack mode. And using the attack mode wisely at the right moment, when you've got the opportunity to unleash the pace that you get, the extra pace that you get, will be key to making the pit boost successful.
Yeah, certainly. Well, what about Jake Dennis as well? Bit of a resurgence of form that we've seen from the Briton over the start of this season. And likewise also for Sebastian Buemi, pole position in Mexico, James. Good pace he's shown throughout the course of this season. I mean, last time out in terms of the results, 7th place at the checkered flag, a little bit behind his teammate Joel Eriksson.
But he started last.
He did, yeah, that's the thing.
He was dead last. He drove a brilliant race last time out in tricky conditions. And as you said, he's a man who's rediscovered his form, looking really strong. He could be on for a great weekend. Yeah, certainly could be. What about Lucas Di Grassi then as well inside the Lola Yamaha app team? One of only 2 full-time drivers that is yet to score points in the championship along with Dan Tickton. He'd love to get that points tally off to a start here this weekend. Just a couple of minutes, it's about 30 seconds or so to go until free practice 2 gets underway. Another driver who was on good form last time out was Nico Müller. 2nd quickest for him after starting on pole position for the first time in Miami. Mitch Evans, of course, eventually going on to take the victory, but a double podium for Porsche in America. A very strong result for that team. Here is Norman Nato inside the garage at the moment for the Nissan team. And again, another driver who would, again, love to get some points on the board here this weekend. Green light is on then at the end of pit lane. Free practice 2 gets underway in the sunshine here in Jeddah as 20 cars filter out of the garages into the pit lane and then onto the circuit for the first time here this afternoon. What do we think we're going to learn
from this session here, James? As we said, it's a lot hotter than we're expecting it to be for the E-Prix later on tonight, but also in terms of qualifying, that sort of is late afternoon going into dusk.
I think they're going to have to work on their tyre pressures, but the biggest thing for this session is making sure that all the changes they made overnight are working on this track, on this layout. It's a very smooth circuit compared to some of the other places we go in Formula E. However, this weekend we have new curbs on this track, much higher ones. The drivers are saying in the chicanes it's more tricky now. You have a little bit less space, and if you get it wrong, you can really get the car out of shape by taking too much apex curve, and that's something we saw happen to Oliver Rowland yesterday in the final corner where he lost half a second. He was looking really quick until that moment.
I understand also the bus stop chicane that we're just seeing Pascal Wehrlein going through at the moment, that's also been tightened up a little bit this year as well. Yeah,
they've just made it a little bit more tricky for the drivers, which is more entertainment for us.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt about it. Some pit boost practice going on in the pit lane here for Sebastian Buemi. No surprise there at all. Of course, it's the return of pit boost, as we said, for the first time since July last season. It's actually here 12 months ago where we saw it being used for the first time. What essentially happens in Formula E, drivers come into the pit lane, they'll stop for 34 seconds. Charging cable gets plugged into the back, an extra 10% worth of energy at 600 kilowatts is the speed that it goes in at the rate of energy, and they have to use it once throughout the race. It's mandatory for every driver. Then they get one attack mode as well to use. They can use that before or after the pit stops, and as we said, strategically, that's going to make things interesting. From what we understand, Karun, it seems like the name of the game, as with most pit stops, is clean air. That's what you sort of want after you've come out the pit lane.
I think you do. I think what you have to remember is this is a different track to London, for example, right? Where, you know, London you had at the XL that we go to, the track's quite narrow. So, you know, someone like Sam Bird last year who went for an unconventional strategy, went early, cycled through the front in free air, and then was able to hold off other people who were coming at him quicker. Here, it'll be harder. You can't really do that because it's a big, wide open track. It will be harder to defend position. We saw last year, reasonable amount of slipstreaming effect as well. You know, especially as the wind might pick up as it does in the evening. So I think you have to think about it a little bit more. And even for the people at the back, you can't just have a set plan and say we're going to do this gamble. I think it's going to be a dynamic race. You have to see what other people around you are doing, see what your pace is like, and see where you are in the pack.
Yeah, to that end, James, do you think there's a possibility we could see drivers at the front of the race sort of backing the pack up a little bit, trying to control the pace at the start of it?
Yeah, I had a little chat in the pit lane with a couple of guys this morning, and there is a theory out there that some drivers could try that. However, I think that if some drivers try that, there's going to be others that are thinking, I'm going to get to the front, I'm going to burn my energy, come in, do my pit boost, and then come out of the pits, get in clear air and go for my attack mode and try and win from the front.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it will all play out. How relevant do you think qualifying, therefore, could be this afternoon? Because we've seen it at some circuits where you could start in 17th, 18th position and cycle your way through the pack. Is that going to be the case here this weekend?
I think with how tight the chicanes are, you're going to want to be qualifying in the top 6. I don't think we'll see the winner starting from outside the top 6. However, I could be wrong.
Yeah, I've been wrong before. Certainly will be wrong again. You see Antonio Felix da Costa just making his way through turns 5 and 6. Where was he yesterday at the end of...
Da Costa struggled.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, we had a chat with him at the end of the session, and he said that he's just struggling to get to grips with all of the systems. You know, he's changed team from Porsche to Jaguar. All the systems are a little bit different, and they didn't hit the sweet spot yesterday. However, they've had the time last night to go through it all, and he looks like he's more on top of his car today.
Yeah, last in FP1 yesterday for Antonio Felix da Costa, some 2.5 seconds off the pace. That's a second slower than his nearest competitor, which was Lucas Di Grassi, who ended up 19th at the end of the session. I mean, hopefully that's not too much of a cause to be concerned. Early stage of the weekend, of course. And
he went straight on twice on his full power laps and outbraked himself. Just he wasn't quite used to it. So he was very open about it. He said that I've got time this evening to go through it with, as he said, guys much smarter than him inside the team that can analyse all of the stuff and change the settings and help him out.
And a missed opportunity for Da Costa in Miami in particular, Karun, obviously in the podium positions, battling for the win with his teammate Evans, and then clattered into the back off by Drugovic.
Yeah, he's been really unlucky, hasn't he? In Brazil as well, he had Pepe Marti running to the back of him. He was in the points firmly. I think he was sort of 5th or 6th at that point, wasn't he? So, yeah, he's had a lot of points sort of taken away for no reason, no fault of his own. Say, riding on board with his teammate, Mitch Evans, winner, of course, last time out. And that'll be helpful for Da Costa, right? Having a driver alongside who's been in that team for 10 years, has developed the car, developed the systems, the electronics that James was just talking about there. Oh, yes, Evans not happy, and rightly so. Wehrlein just sort of meandering along and crawling along on the racing line. That's ruined Evans's lap. So I'm not surprised he's annoyed about that.
Yeah, we'll wait and see whether the stewards are going to investigate that if we get any notices coming up on our timing screen. Not the first time that we've seen that this weekend. We saw some problems with Jean-Eric Vergne in that chicane yesterday. Albie Lau is our strategist on the pit wall here this weekend. Albie, in terms of tyre temperatures, that was a big talking point.
Got my way.
As we hear Evans on the team radio, they're quite clearly unhappy. But Albie, tyre temperatures were a big talking point in Miami a fortnight ago. Were you expecting there to be a similar conversation here this weekend in Jeddah?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the track right now is like 30 degrees hotter than it was yesterday in free practice 1. So that really limits what they can do during this session, because you're just going to cook the tires if you keep doing push laps. You're going to have to think more about how you cool the tires in between. And ultimately, I think middle session, you're going to see a lot of cars going back into pit lanes and just having a chat with their drivers and letting the tires cool down before going for that last run. But definitely managing the temperatures this session is super critical.
Thanks, Albie. And just one more question, actually, to that end. In qualifying, especially in the group stages, this year in particular, we've seen drivers going out, doing one run and staying out. If tyre temperatures are going to be that important and that critical this weekend, is there a possibility we could see them maybe doing 2 runs coming in and changing the tyres over side to side, perhaps? Or do we think it's just going to be a case of going out the pit lane, they do 1 run and stay out for the majority of the session?
I mean, doing the side-to-side thing is definitely an option. I think going to a second set is less likely. Ultimately, you still need to bring these hand cooks up to temperature, and it is a lot easier in these sort of conditions. You know, yesterday at night they needed 3 warm-up laps. Today, this morning, they only needed the 1. So it definitely opens up that conversation a little bit to see if maybe they can get a little bit more by siding the tires.
Thanks, Albie, much appreciated. And to that end as well, I suppose that benefits the drivers, especially in the dual stages of qualifying, because what we've seen traditionally, I mean, if you look at Miami, I know it's a bit of an exception to the rule because it's so cold, but drivers are going out, they're doing 3 or 4 build laps, probably less so here.
Yeah, it's also for the duels, if you have had the group stage first, you can keep that tyre in a nice tyre window, let's say, keeping the warmth. Even if you've got 5-10 minutes between the time that you're on track, you do keep that core temperature, and that's really important for the guys going to the dual phases.
I think it's such a hard thing, isn't it? Because, you know, these sort of references, right, of how slow they're doing these laps to cool the tires down, how fast they go to build the tire pressures back up. What do they do with the car setup? Do they change it? You can get lost, can't you, James? Like, you know, in these conditions, because what happens is when it gets hot, you know, the track has got less grip, the cars are slightly run more, and you need to make sure you stay calm, because you could spook yourself and think you've got all sorts of issues, which actually, when the temperature comes down for qualifying in the race, could start to go away. So you got to be careful not to overreact, I think, to issues you got in this session. And it's really hard. It's really hard to understand when you've actually got a problem, or whether it's a problem caused just by the temperature, which is not representative.
So you could end up with a few red herrings, is what you're saying, that kind of thing.
I've never been a fishing man, but sure.
You know the phrase, though, where, you know, you end up sort of, you find what you think is a problem and it turns out to not be, essentially.
Not be later on when the sun's gone down.
No. Absolutely. We'll wait and see how that all works out. You see drivers just making their way through turn 4. That's, of course, where we saw some drama this time last year for the DS Penske team. This is Phil Charles, deputy team principal. But we saw Maximilian Günther going on to take victory in the first race of the weekend, and then careering into the side of Da Costa on the opening lap in the following race.
Yes, little moment of brain fade there. But, you know, he started this weekend very strong, Max, yesterday. Yeah,
hopefully he's on continual form for the remainder of this one. We'll wait and see how that one works out here. So just over 30 minutes left to go in this session. Here's Sylvain Filippi, team principal of the Envision team. Somewhat of a resurgence they've had this season after, let's not forget, being Season 9 champions, team champions that is, in Formula E. Last couple of years they've spent it really in the doldrums. However, as we said, pole position for Sebastian Buemi in Mexico, and then last time out in Miami, double points finish, especially with Joel Eriksson, the Swede. He was 4th at the checkered flag. Teammate Sebastian Buemi, as James said earlier on, came from last up to 7th rather, at the end of the race, and he's now sitting in 3rd at this stage of FP2.
Yeah, resurgent form from Envision here. it's quite impressive because they've really struggled last year. And to get back on top of the car, the powertrain, obviously with a new driver as well, probably brought some fresh enthusiasm into the team. So, yeah, they're doing very well.
And I was talking to Joel Eriksson actually in the pit lane before the start of this weekend, Karun, and he said that there's not really a big turnaround time between here and Miami. He's actually only had one full day in the sim. And unlike some of the other drivers, he's got to learn a new circuit for the first time.
Yeah, that's right. You know, I think what helps is in Formula E, the tracks are generally quite short. So, you know, you get to do a lot of laps. You get to go through the same corner quite a few times and learn it. You know, for Eriksson, who's come from things like F2 and F3, you know, they get 1 half-hour session on some big wide open tracks. So in some ways, you know, he gets a bit more opportunity to learn the tracks, I think, here.
Yeah, you see him throwing the car over the curbs there in the bus stop chicane. As you look inside the Citroën Racing pit box there, that's Cyril Blaze, the team principal. And as we said, dog's day at the office for the Citroën team last time out. Nick Cassidy only 16th of the checkered flag teammate, going one place better than that in P15. He'll be hoping, or they'll be hoping, for a much stronger result here this weekend.
Can you explain that?
Explain what?
Dog's day at the office.
Dog's
what
day
happens when the dog comes to the office?
I don't know. It's just, have you not? It's just a phrase. I've no idea.
What does it actually mean?
Well,
is it a good or a bad day?
A terrible day at the office.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. No,
I quite like it when dogs come to the office. So, you know.
Are you trying to say we should turn it around?
Are you not a dog person?
No, I am a dog person. Definitely a dog person. Anyone who's not a dog person needs a bit of a look at it.
So then,
really, you know.
Why would you have a problem when the dog comes to the office? Why would it be a bad day? Dogs bring joy.
I didn't realise we were going to get analysis of the phrases, but
I didn't understand what you were saying, and I thought FP2 is a nice, relaxed time to have this conversation.
Hey, well, you know, I'll tell you what, I'll endeavour to find out, and as we go into qualifying,
yeah,
I'll find the definition in the dictionary.
I will bring a pet dog into our commentary box next time to cheer you up.
Well, that would cheer us all up, wouldn't it, to be honest?
There you go.
There we go. Dan Tickton, Cooper Kiro, 16th quickest at the moment for that team. You see slightly revised livery, courtesy of some more sponsorship on the side of that car. So a couple of tinges of yellow now on the Cooper Kiro machine. As Tickton makes his way through, I have to say, he does seem a little bit more relaxed and just a bit more himself this weekend. As we said, challenging start to the year for him. No points on the board so far. As I mentioned earlier on, not necessarily his fault on all of those occasions. However, he just looks a little bit more, I don't know the best way of describing it, just a bit more Dan Tickton-esque, really.
Yeah, he seems very relaxed. As I said, he's been very fast. He just hasn't managed to convert the weekend yet. And he's got 2 opportunities this weekend. And I think it's a really important moment in the season for him to make sure he gets a good result.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We'll see how that all works out. See some pit boost practice going on here for Norman Nato in the Nissan garage. So what he'll do, of course, in the race is come to a stop, 34 seconds, get an extra 10% worth of energy plugged into the back of that car. And teams, of course, just making sure that all the systems are working okay and that they've checked it all over. And we're all good to go. Same here for Jake Dennis in the newly reliveried fluorescent yellow and black Andretti. Look here at Da Costa, 12th fastest for him so far at this point in the session. That's a little bit more like it. So just over 26 minutes left to go in this session. We've seen Da Costa making his way through in towards turns 5 and 6, this sort of fast chicane. Fastest overall, though, in the first sector, and you can see a bit of a slide on, so he's certainly not hanging about here, is he? No,
this looks like it could be a full power lap. One of the first ones, I think. There you can see the tyres just screaming in this high temperature. I'm not sure they're going to hang on for an entire lap at that.
Yeah, but I think this is important for Antonio to do, isn't it? Because, as you say, he didn't close out the laps yesterday. So for his own confidence and his own sort of peace of mind heading into qualifying, he needs to get a couple of references under his belt. And he's got enough experience now to know, okay, this is what it's like in these conditions. When the track cools down, this is where it will be better. But he needs to create that baseline in his mind, which he hasn't done yesterday.
Yeah, building confidence is key.
Yeah, Da Costa was the only driver who didn't set a 350 kilowatt lap in FP1 yesterday. So, as he said, important for him to get some running. And he does so, goes 1.5 seconds faster. That's our first full power lap then in this session, ahead of his old teammate Pascal Wehrlein. Albie, we were talking about rookie track time a little bit earlier on. What are your thoughts on that situation? Because, of course, Joel Eriksson is one of the drivers who's learning this circuit for the first time. Do you think he's got enough of an opportunity to get a handle on this racetrack?
No, I mean, in that respect, I wholly disagree with Karun there, because I think for the rookies, it's super difficult in FE. You've only got the one set of tires, really, that the teams are using during free practice. And between, you know, having to warm them up, cool them down, they maybe get 3-4 push laps, and then they got to try to learn how to drive it on 350 kilowatt all-wheel drive. And then they got to try to learn to do target running. So they get very, very few laps that are consistent. So between that pit stop practice, for example. So it's really, really difficult.
Yeah, thanks very much, Albie. Much appreciated for the insight there.
Put me back in my box, hasn't he?
It certainly has done.
Engineers,
they've just, you know, they take the fun out of it, don't they? You know, with all these complicated run plans. But he's right. You know, I think though what Albie was talking about, I think there's a commonality to other championships, though. Sorry, other drivers, whether you're a rookie or not, you've got to go through all of these things. I think for the rookies, my point is, because the tracks are shorter, you get, you know, you get more laps going around and around the same corner to get the basics of line length, curb usage, braking, you know, that sort of stuff. You do get those references much more with a short track layout than you would with a, I don't know, a 6-kilometer track on Spa or something.
Yeah, just 3 kilometers this circuit here at Jeddah. So as you say, definitely on the shorter side. Actually, not the shortest track we've raced so far this season. That was actually Miami last time out, which was just over 2.6 kilometers. So very short indeed at that circuit. Slightly longer, as we said here, as we look at some pit boost practice and some tyre changes going on. And then the Citroën Racing Garage, Nick Cassidy there on the left, Jean-Eric Verne on the right-hand side. Now, we've seen some, as we said, really strong performances from Nick Cassidy going on to take that victory in Mexico. For Verne, he's not done badly at the start of this season, but relative to his new teammate...
Yeah, Da Costa's the only one with the 350, that's a 16-1, and you have P2 with the 300. Your theoretical best lap is the same, so you did all the sectors on that lap, which is good.
Yeah, just finishing up the thoughts there of Verne, relative to his teammate, it's not necessarily been the dream start that the Frenchman was hoping for.
No, but when you're going up against the guy who's got the highest win rate in this championship, who, you know, he's won, what, 4 of the last 6 races, 7 races?
Something like
that. You know, he's on a phenomenal form, Nick, other than the last race. So, yeah, difficult when you're up against him. One of the things that's interesting for me in this session is nobody's doing any energy save laps. Everyone's just doing their push 300 kilowatt laps and trying to make sure that they're ready for the group phase. No one's doing energy save.
I feel like that's a question for Albie, really. I don't know if Albie's still there or listening, but I'd be interested to know why that is the case.
Yeah, we'll endeavour to find out. We'll throw that over to Albie.
Have you got a hotline to him somewhere?
I will try and find it, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, my only theory is that if the teams are that confident on their strategy, or they're that unsure that they don't know what the strategy is going to turn out to be, that they're just sort of leaving it, and they understand the importance of qualifying this weekend, because as we mentioned earlier, it's going to be important, I think, with how tight these chicanes are to start towards the front. But the fact that everyone is pretty much primarily focusing on their qualifying performance is a bit of a surprise to me.
Well, one team that's doing quite well so far in this session, as Buemi just goes to the top of the pile, the two Mahindras of Nick de Vries and Eduardo Mortara. Mortara and de Vries inside the top 10 with a double points finish last time out in Miami. Of course, a podium for the Swiss driver as well in Mexico City. Not a bad start to the season, a lot of potential, a lot of promise, and you get the sense that they are on the precipice of a very strong result, possibly a race victory in Season 12 here in Formula E. Let's go down to catch up with their team principal to that end. Is Fred Bertrand, and he is in the pit lane with Alexa.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I agree. I think Mahindra, as you've been saying, Fred, that they've been having a really strong season so far. You're sitting pretty in the team's championship. Edo is well within the fight in the drivers. How do you assess your season so far?
We only did 3 races, so it's difficult to take any conclusion. But yeah, we are trying to get consistency as the main word, and that's definitely what we try to deliver at each race. Sao Paulo was not exceptional, but definitely what we did in Mexico and after that in Miami was good. So we hope we can keep that same type of result. The 2 cars in the points, that's the main thing for us.
And at the start of the season, we spoke a lot about how that consistency, that you're kind of one of the only teams that has really kept personnel, drivers the same. Have you found that has helped you going into this year?
I think we have been lucky that the guy liked to work with us, and Probably also the nice atmosphere and the nice trend in the team helped on retaining people, but everybody wants, we started the project together. I think we all want to see what will be the outcome. Season 12 is very important, and definitely it helps, keeping the same driver, keeping the same people around the drivers. It's a gain in terms of efficiency, not in the car this time, but on the way the guys are working together and get the right ideas together and quick. So yeah, definitely something good. I don't know if it's an advantage, but it's something nice to feel.
And looking at this weekend, so far on the 300 laps, your drivers are setting pretty good times, definitely up there. But obviously with the temperature changes throughout the day, how much can we actually read into these free practice 2 times?
Difficult to read, to be honest, but and the condition between the quali and the race will also be very different. So what we try is to get adapted very quickly to what we have. That's also something important, and then give the maximum confidence to the drivers so that they are able to push the limits and push the boundaries of the car. That's what we need them to do, and we need to make sure we give them the most adaptable and the most consistent car also to them. That's what we try to do. Up to now it worked, but the free practice is still long and the day is very long, so let's see.
Thank you, Fred. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks to Fred. Thank you to Alexa down in pit lane as well. Yeah, Mahindra on a good run of form so far this season. Let's hope that continues here this weekend. To that end, we heard Alexa rather talking about the 300 kilowatt laps that we're seeing quite a few have come in over the course of this session. Not drivers really focusing on energy-saving laps. Whoa, that's a big moment over the curb there for Oliver Rowland. I think he's clipped the wall as well. He's damaged the front right suspension. Yellow flag is out, and he was on a flying lap that he was about to go to the top of the timesheets.
Exactly the same as he did yesterday. He was fastest in first and second sector and made a mistake in the last corner, second to last corner.
I think we're going to get a red flag here because that car's going to need to be recovered. He's right on the entry to the pit lane.
That's a big mistake.
Yeah, especially at this stage of the weekend as well. Big old repair job, and indeed the red flag does come out then with just under 18 minutes left of this free practice 2 session. Oliver Rowland in the wall here in Jeddah. Big drama for the reigning world champion.
So we had a little chat earlier, Tom, about the pressure that he's under carrying this championship.
Let's have a look at this. So, he just misjudged it. It's like he's turned in. It's almost rotated more than he expected it to. Yeah, we'll see with the onboard. So I think the first part is he sort of takes the normal line in, then he turns, and it rotated much more, I think, than he expected it to. I mean, the sentence Oliver Rowland has hit the wall is not something that I feel we've said very much. And that's a really unusual mistake to see from him. I mean, clearly driver error, but that's a very unusual driver error to see of someone of Oliver Rowland's caliber, really.
Yeah, the last time I can remember an error of that magnitude by him was actually the last round in London when he ended up in the wall and out of the race. But yeah, certainly in a free practice session, unheard of for the British driver, and that's not ideal at all for their run plan for the remainder of this session, and also preparation, of course, going into qualifying as well. So Rowland, thankfully, of course, okay. He'll be jumping out of that car, heading back to pit lane and debriefing, but the team now with a fair old bit of work to do. System T radio.
Sorry, stupid mistake. It's fine, it's fine. It was a good loop, it's fine. But it's not fine, but okay. We will get ready for the qualifying. Just stop. It's not fine.
Yeah, Rowland unhappy there and not willing to listen to much reason from his race engineer either.
Well, one of the problems is he could have damaged the front powertrain with that impact because it could pull the drive shaft out.
Yeah, it's a very good point. We'll wait and see whether there's anything going on with regards to that. Let's have another look then at what happened to Oliver Rowland, bringing out the red flag with just under 20 minutes remaining. So he's slightly wide on the way into that first part, turns in to the right-hander over the curb and just misjudges it.
It just, I think, you know, Karun was right. He just doesn't expect the car to turn right as quickly as it does. It looked very responsive. It looks unresponsive in the left. So if we look here, he has to sort of turn in. He's got a little bit of understeer, and then he turns right. He has no understeer. And just clips the apex, and that's that. Yeah,
this will be a very good view of it. Let's have a look at what's happening to the suspension. See the front powertrain there as well. Going into the right, clatter it.
Yeah, that's not pretty.
No, that's going to be a fair bit of damage. And like you say, could need that front powertrain being replaced. If it is, there could be a grid penalty coming the way of Oliver Rowland. And that would be the second race in succession that he suffered one as well, because he got one in Miami a couple of weeks ago as well.
He hasn't looked as comfortable, especially this weekend, than how we know him and how he charged that championship last year. And I wonder if there's a little bit of pressure there. What do you think, Karun? A little bit of pressure carrying the #1 plate?
I don't know. I actually think it's the competition maybe has just developed a bit more. You know, we've seen teams like Mahindra, for example, making big progress compared to last year. You know, we've seen pace from Kiro. I feel like Andretti have got their game together. You know, last year they were struggling. So I think just that, you know, we're in the last year of a rule cycle, last year of this generation of car, but the teams have all still made small refinements, and maybe Nissan and Roland haven't made that step as some other people, and he's having to push a bit harder. You know, I think also, if you look at how he won last year's championship, it wasn't really, I don't think, down to outright speed. I think there were other drivers who were faster and had a better qualifying you know, speed, outright speed. But he had consistency. He always qualified in the front pack, and he raced really well, and he was brilliant in energy management. So, but yeah, just look, he's turned in, and at this point he already knows. Look, he's tried to bail out of it and correct it, but he knows he's heading to the accident, and we're obviously seeing it in a very, very slowed down version there. He's not had enough time to turn out of it.
That's a lot of curb he took on the inside as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Front right, as you see, very visibly damaged as a result of that impact there for Oliver Rowland, and for frustration on the face of the world champion.
They only have 2 sets of tyres, so it's quite lucky actually they didn't get a puncture during that. So the tyre looks okay, but yeah, a lot of suspension damage, and hopefully the front powertrain is also going to be okay. A lot of work for those mechanics.
What we should point out, of course, is in free practice the time keeps counting down. Yeah. So for everyone else, this recovery process is having an impact in terms of their plans, their run plans, and what they want to do in the final part of the session.
Yeah, depending on how long this red flag goes on for, there is a possibility the race director, Marek Aniszewski, could add some minutes on at the end of the session to compensate for the time that's been lost. But that remains to be seen at the moment. Obviously, the clock stopped at 18 minutes effectively for the rest of the field. It's now down to 13 minutes, so we're under a 5-minute red flag period as Roland makes his way back into the pit lane here. And some debriefs go on inside the garage. Have a listen.
Sorry, stupid mistake.
Yeah, can't really make too much of what's going on with the conversation inside of the garage at the moment. The upshot is, currently, it's Sebastian Buemi that's quickest from Da Costa and Wehrlein, then Mahindra. So Jaguar powertrains 1 and 2 at the moment. Then you've got a Porsche, a Mahindra, a DS Penske with the Stellantis powertrain. So pretty even Stevens inside the top 10. A lot of diversity going on in terms of the teams and the powertrains. Just had confirmation the session will restart at 13:59 local time. It's just gone 13:58 local time, so just over a minute, and then we'll get FP2 resumed following that red flag. But we've, at the moment, lost about 7 minutes of run time.
Yeah, but 11 minutes left. It's actually a great opportunity for the teams to make some setup changes whilst we've had this pause. Let the tyres cool down a little bit in this crazy heat that we have in Jeddah, and give them an opportunity to actually go out and do a qualifying simulation at the end of this session.
So talk me through some of the parameters that they can change in quick succession. Obviously, spring rates on the front suspension. What else could we do in that sort of short period? Springs,
Dampers, ride heights, tyre pressures. That's really all you probably want to be changing from physical side. But with Formula E, you can change a lot on the software side. So the way the car is feeling under braking, the way that the balance goes from the front axle to the rear axle, these things that make a big difference in the driver's confidence, the engineers can work on that. And you can tune that corner by corner independently. So there's a lot of work that the engineers can do. They can load this software into the car, and this pause gives them the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, so you can see confirmation that the session will restart in a minute, and the red flag is removed. The green flag comes on, and we get FP2 back underway here in Jeddah. Sans one car, a certain Oliver Rowland, who will take no further part in this session.
No. Tricky one for him now.
Yeah.
He's got one high-powered lap in from yesterday, but not having that reference going into today, it will hurt him a little bit, and that crash is going to hurt his confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, one has to consider that, as you say, no high-power lap time really in this session, aside from that one, but also the track's going to have evolved from FP1 to FP2 and will subsequently evolve as we go through into qualifying.
Sure. The only good news for him is he was fastest in Sector 1 and Sector 2 before he found the wall.
Yeah, I mean, it shows that the car's got speed and he's got speed around here. So, but you know, clearly he's, as a character, just listening to that radio communication, he just needs to vent and just let it be. You know, and it's funny actually. I used to have the same conversation with some of my family actually. You know, if we had a bad race or a bad weekend, people would say to me, "Oh, don't worry, you know, it'll be better next time." And I was like, "Don't tell me that. You don't know it's going to be better next time. Just let me have a rant. Let me have a vent. I'm annoyed with myself. I'm annoyed with something that I've done. Let me just get it out of my system. I don't need you to say anything. Just, you know."
Yeah. Sometimes you need 5 minutes to just, like you say.
Just let me process it. Let me get over it. Let me beat myself up. That's what I need to do. And I think he's kind of the same. He just needs to be left alone. He doesn't need pacifying. He's not a child. He's, you know, he's a driver who knows himself and knows what works for him and knows what he needs to do to get the best out of himself. So I think that, again, that, you know, the team, they mean well, right? They're trying to make him feel better and they're trying to comfort him, but that's not the character that he is, and I think they need to understand that.
Well, just had confirmation in the commentary box, rather, that there will be no extension to this session. It will go down in the last 9 minutes of this. So drivers have lost 7 or 8 minutes of track time. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it could be the difference between making those last incremental setup changes. And that's why we're now seeing the likes of Norman Nato straight out on a 350 kilowatt push lap here.
Yeah, they're not doing build laps in these temperatures, you know, just again to explain that. So normally when it's cooler at night, like we had yesterday, you know, they do 2, sometimes even 3 laps to just weave around and build up the temperature and the tires progressively into a sweet spot. Because it's so hot, the tires are coming up to temperature so quickly, and if anything, they're overheating by the end of the lap. So they're all getting out there and getting on it straight away.
Yeah, timing screen's lighting up here in the commentary box. Let's go and talk to Albie. Albie, of course, you've seen drivers' mindsets from a different perspective, from an engineering perspective. Talk to us about Oliver Rowland. What do you think about his mindset post that incident which brought out the red flag here in FP2?
Yeah, so, I mean, I've worked with Ollie a lot, actually, in testing, and he's one of these drivers that he just demands the best out of everyone on the team, as well as himself, you know. He's one of these drivers that notices everything in the car. If something's not quite right, he'll be with the mechanics or with the tire engineer. You know, he's really into that detail, and he'll be very upset with himself. And in those situations, again, like Karun said, you just let him be. You don't need to tell him he's all right. He knows he made a mistake, so let him process it. Just, you know, give him time and space, and I think that'll be fine.
Seb, just thinking about turn 8, if the AFC increase was a benefit for 13, I think it could be a similar thing for turn 8.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I think
Albie.
it was.
Because I think that way we can extract a little bit more detail on the initial, and you have like more of a bleed off, not in the system late break.
Thanks, Albie. Much appreciated. Yeah, good to hear some team radio there about the car setup for Sebastian Buemi. So 7 minutes now left of free practice 2, and lap times coming in thick and fast at the end of this slightly truncated second practice session ahead of qualifying, which is not too far away, actually, in about an hour and a half or so after this session concludes. Then we'll get qualifying underway, and we'll see the drivers heading out on track to see in which order they will line up on the grid. Of course, doubleheader this weekend here in Jeddah, but also the return of Formula E's Evo sessions as well. On Sunday here, we'll have 10 content creators going head-to-head in 2 teams. We'll have the Quick Stars and the Senior Frogs, and they will be going head-to-head against one another in a dual qualifying format to see who is the quickest driver overall and who will be crowned as the team's champions. It's going to be hugely exciting to see combined followers combined, I think, in total of over sort of 300-400 million or something ridiculous like that. It's absolutely insane, and very excited to see which of the drivers is going to be quickest. We've got a couple of returnees from last year in particular, James, and quite a few new fresh faces as well.
Yeah, it's going to be super exciting to see how they get on and see how they face the challenge of driving these super complex cars.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Pascal Wehrlein on a hot one then as he makes his way through the first sector. Evans and Muller also going personal best in sector 1 for the Jaguar and the Porsche team there respectively. But Wehrlein making his way through into turn 13. That's where attack mode will be activated in the race, by the way. Drivers will take a longer loop and they'll get an extra 50 kilowatts of energy, and of course all-wheel drive come the racing conditions later on this afternoon. And also you can see a fair bit of traffic going on in this final sector. That's going to be a big talking point, we reckon, into qualifying as well. Two very tight chicanes and not a lot of room to move out of the way, especially given the corners are so blind. Let's see whether Wehrlein can catapult himself to the top of the order. He can by a 1/10 of a second. So former world champion Pascal Wehrlein hits the front of the timing screen as Evans improves up to 10th quickest.
You know, Roller's down in 18th, but nobody's beaten his middle sector time still. You know, which underlines the potential that he had actually in terms of being up there. So, you know, and the fact that his teammate Norman Nato is second shows that if they get the car ready in time and if he doesn't have any penalties, two big ifs, you know, I fully expect Oliver Roller to be right in the fight.
Tictum taking some liberties over the curbs through the bus stop chicane there.
A lot of commitment there. He's actually on a very quick lap here. He's looking into moving to the top 3 with this lap, but super commitment going into the chicane.
Yeah, a bit of traffic in front with the Andretti as well. Just needs to be a bit cautious. He doesn't get too caught up behind. Thankfully, the Andretti moves out of the way, not causing Dan Tictum too many problems. Either maximising the circuit and the radius of this final chicane going over to the left-hand side before flicking it into the right-hander. Out of the final corner for Tictum. Where does this move the Briton? Up the order. Second fastest. Fastest overall, in fact, in the final sector of the lap. Just 6/100ths of a second away from his fellow Porsche powertrain car of Pascal Wehrlein.
I think he was fastest in Sector 3 yesterday as well. Hey, he seems very strong in that sector.
Yeah, that's good news there for Dan Tictum. Nice to have a bit of pace underneath him and hopefully gives him something to smile about. Just under 4 minutes left of this session, so still plenty of time for the complexion of this one to change. As we look here at Jake Dennis moving his way through the first sector. And nice to see Dennis back on a bit more of a resurgent form in Formula E for season 12. He's struggled with the balance of that Andretti over the last couple of years in terms of the feel under braking, but no such dramas here.
Well, he went deep, though, into turn 8, didn't he? I think that compromised his line in the chicane a bit.
Yeah, he didn't look like he's got the best confidence on the brakes in that car. It's something that he struggled with last year, and he seemed to have fixed it, but again, it seems, well, sector time seems to suggest otherwise, Karun.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like he missed that first curb. I do think he lost a little bit of time, but clearly the rest of that sector was good because he's gone fastest of anybody in that middle sector.
Let's have a look at Jake Dennis then, rather, as he comes out the final corner across the timing line for the Briton. Where does it put him on the order? It's the top of the pile by just under a 1/10 of a second. That's brilliant there for the season 9 world champion. Now, of course, we saw that Oliver Rowland ended up crashing out of free practice 2 in dramatic style in the penultimate chicane here in Jeddah, and subsequently he's now down the bottom of the pile. Let's get down and talk to their team principal, Tommaso Volpe, and sort of get more of an update on the incident, find out if there's anything more that's going to need doing in terms of rebuilding that car. Will it need a new front powertrain, for example? Volpe is talking to Alexa in the pit lane.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I am down here with Tommaso, and firstly, glad to see that Ollie's all right, back in the garage, but the car certainly not in a brilliant state. Can you talk us through the extent of the damage and what might need repairing prior to qualifying later on today?
No, it's okay. I mean, it was a driving mistake, so of course we are already working. I mean, the moment the car is back, we will work to repair it for quali. Shouldn't be an issue. Just a driving mistake. One.
Does it look like it's going to need a change on the front powertrain?
We don't know. We need to check. There is the risk, of course, because the impact could have damaged the front, the PK, but we don't know. As soon as the car is back, we will do.
And of course, we've heard that Ollie's not been feeling too well this weekend, wasn't hugely happy with the car yesterday. How do you kind of help him reset his mindset heading into the rest of the day now?
Well, he's a professional. He knows that these things can happen, and he was more comfortable with the car already this morning. So it's just a shame that he doesn't have enough time to get fully comfortable for the quali. But I'm sure he will enter quali with the right mindset.
Thank you, Tommaso.
Thanks, Tommaso. Thank you to Alexa down in pit lane there. So, yeah, still some diagnosis to go on. Marty, I don't think he's going to be very happy at all. Look at this. Oh, traffic. We were talking about it in qualifying later on, but he's had to abort this lap, and he was caught up quite badly in the first sector, and that was even worse there in sector 2. And I think the stewards might be having a bit of a look at that one there for the Spaniard, because wrong place, wrong time for a lot of the drivers as Marty was coming through on a flyer.
And the problem for him is this is his final lap to do it, you know, because after this, he's not going to have enough time to cool the tyres. Like, the tyres now are going to be super hot for him to go do a cool lap and go again. So I don't know, maybe he'll try a double push, but I think highly unlikely. So for Pepe Marti, going into qualifying, he doesn't have that reference in his mind of, you know, what we talked about earlier with Acosta, for example. This is where you need to brake. This is where the car, you know, you want to place the car. This is just to get some sense of what it's like, even though the track conditions are much hotter.
It's amazing how the field spread has really shrunk down over the last 5 minutes or so. 19 drivers now separated by just over 1.1 seconds. Let's have another look at what happened here to Marty then. So he's coming through this blind section of the circuit. Here's some team radio.
Seriously, what the is all of this? What are they doing? Do they not know I'm boosting in the trap? Are they all dumb?
Pepe making his point very clear there on team radio, and it's the Envision that he gets stuck behind there of, which one was that? I think it was Joel Eriksson that was...
I mean, fair comments, really. I mean, it's shocking behaviour from the guys on their slow laps. You need to drive off the line if you're on a slow lap. Don't dawdle around on the line. It's dangerous.
Yeah, and you saw Eriksson there sort of off the line and then moving over in a bit of a panic last minute.
This is even worse. The last thing you want when you're approaching a slow car is for it to change its trajectory. You can't predict that. They just need to stay off the line, and yeah.
Tictum's gone to the top of the pile on the other side of the Cupra Kiro garage then. 1:15.343. That's lovely there from the British driver. What about Taylor Barnard? He's on a personal best in Sector 1 and Sector 2. Bit of oversteer through into the penultimate chicane there. Gathers it all up okay. You can see a few drivers in front of them, but it's not too much of a worry in terms of losing. No, it is a bit of a worry. And that is Lucas Di Grassi, who gets in the wrong place at the wrong time.
He could be in trouble here because Di Grassi's got a lot of penalty points on his licence, and I know the FIA are looking into all of these blocking issues, but he had the opportunity to not get in the way, and he chose to block him.
I don't get it. Why didn't he just go straight on the left? There's a gap in the barrier where you can just go straight and get out of your, you know, the other driver's way there.
Yeah, disappointing there for Lucas Di Grassi, and we'll wait and see what comes out in the wash for that one. Taylor Barnard subsequently not able to improve on that final flying lap. Still ends the session 8th quickest behind teammate Max Günther. Let's have another look at what happens then. So you're going to see, look, there we go. You can see the mistake has come through for...
That's terrible behaviour.
But did Di Grassi just make a mistake?
Sure, but even if you make the mistake, you can still go left.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's made the mistake there, and then he's already committed to the corner at the wrong point, and Barnard's just nowhere to go, an innocent party, while he's on a flying lap.
Yeah, Lucas could easily have gone left there. It was easier for him to go left than right. He had already ruined his lap, so yeah, a bit selfish to ruin someone else's as well.
Yeah, and you wonder whether Joel Eriksson's going to have an investigation by the stewards after that session following what happened. Well, we heard Pepe Marti sounding pretty unhappy.
So P1. So main loss sector 1, 1/10, and sector 2, half a tenth, and again best sector 3.
Copy. Yeah, I'm just not quite getting turn 1 and 2 right.
So yeah, just a few bits of improvement there for Dan Tictum. On the other side of the garage, we heard Pepe Marti quite unhappy. Karin, let's go and talk to him after FP2.
Yeah, I'm just let it do the practice start there. Let's see if we can get a word with him. Pepe, it's Karun up in the commentary box. Bit of frustration there with the traffic at the end.
Hello, mate. Yeah, it was not great. I mean, honestly, like last lap before qualifying, and I think they all should have known that I was coming because I was calling the lap before, so yeah. But yeah, thankfully nothing happened. Could have been a big one, so it's all good.
Yeah, I can tell you, James and I in the commentary box, we were wincing when we saw that, so glad you got away with it. Your teammates gone quicker, so at least some good data for the team to look at before qualifying.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the car's been behaving well. To be fair, I didn't really do a get lap in the 350 when I got traffic, and another one was quite shit, so we'll just have to look at that and then go again and qualify, hopefully as well.
Right, thank you for that. Apologies for the language there, of course, but emotions running high in the cockpit after a tough session there for Pepe at the end.
Yeah, better language than what he used at the exact moment of that incident, but yes, apologies for that.
Difference is we got the beeper machine on the one we heard earlier on. Marty ends the session 19th quickest in the Cupra Kiro, so pretty much top and tailing the order there for that outfit, with Dan Tictum at the head of the field by nearly 4/100ths of a second. There's Eduardo Mortara, another top 5 finish for him in free practice too, as he jumps out of that Mahindra. Let's get confirmation of the results here in free practice 2 for Jeddah. So Dan Ticktum leads a British 1-2 ahead of Jake Dennis. Then it's Pascal Wehrlein. Norman Nato up there in 4th quickest. That's a good omen going into quali for the Frenchman ahead of Mortara. De Costa, who bounced back from a difficult FP1 yesterday. He's in front of the DS Penske duo of Gunter and Barnard. Dragovic again inside the top 10 ahead of Jean-Eric Vergne in the Citroën. And then a bit of a tale of two halves further down. Casting not really lighting up the timing screens. We hardly mentioned him throughout that session. Just 12th quickest in the second of the Citroëns. Pepe Marti also down there in 19th after being balked on his final flying lap. We'll wait and see whether any investigations are ongoing. Mitch Evans also struggling, likewise down there in 17th. But the big talking point in FP2 was Oliver Rowland in the Nissan. Of course, crashing out in free practice 2, bringing out the red flag, giving his team a fair old repair job going into qualifying. Well, let's have a look at the top 3 then. Pascal Wehrlein. I have to say, the Porsche powertrains 1, 2 and 3 in that session. Wehrlein 3rd quickest. They're looking pretty handy so far here.
They are looking good, but they won't be happy that their man, Pascal Wehrlein, in the factory car is the slowest of the 3.
Yeah, there's, I'm sure, a few tenths of a second still left in that car, and some setup changes and some tweaks to be made ahead of qualifying. Jake Dennis 2nd quickest in the Andretti.
Strong from the British drivers.
Yeah, looking really good, especially for Dan Ticktum. Pulled that lap time right out the end. We heard him on the team radio there, Karun, saying, yeah, half a tenth here, half a tenth there. He's still got a bit more time left in his pocket.
But he's superb in that final sector. You know, he's a tenth and a half quicker than Wehrlein in the last sector alone. And actually, that's the difference. That's where he's quicker than Dennis and Wehrlein and Nato. You know, if those 3 drivers, they're actually ahead of him in the first 2 sectors of the lap. But yeah, if I was any of these other drivers, I'd be spending a lot of time watching Dan's onboard before the qualifying session, just seeing what he does in the last 2 chicanes.
Yeah, getting down to the E-pad. We just saw Mitch Evans just a few moments ago, down in 17th fastest. That's not ideal at all there. Can we read too much into that going into qualifying?
Lacking confidence, really. I mean, the great thing is Antonio's up in 6th place in the sister car, so there's some data again there, and Antonio's having a good day, but it's rare that they both have a good day at the moment, the Jaguars.
Yeah, it seems to be a bit hit or miss, doesn't it? You can see Sebastian Buemi on the right there, Nick Cassidy on the left with his new aerodynamic haircut, courtesy of the bet that he lost with teammate Jean-Eric Vergne in Miami. Well, then let's have a look at some highlights from free practice 2 in the baking sunshine here in Jeddah. Early afternoon, it kicked off, 30 degrees air temperature, significantly warmer than we're expecting it for both qualifying and the race later on this afternoon. It was a relatively steady affair at the start of the session, drivers going out and going straight into sort of qualifying mode, practicing their 300 kilowatts and then the 350 kilowatts laps for the groups and the dual stages respectively. However, we then saw, of course, some big upsets later on in the session for some drivers and some impeding going on for some others there as well. Drivers getting caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Of course, some pit boost practice ahead of the E-Prix later on this afternoon. 31 laps is the expected race duration for round 4 here in Jeddah. There's also some tyre changes as well, as drivers were keen to manage the different tyre temperatures in the warm sunshine here in Saudi Arabia. But this was the big moment that defined the session for one Oliver Rowland, the reigning world champion, clipping the barrier in the penultimate chicane, ending his session early and bringing out the red flag. The British driver visibly and audibly frustrated, both in person and of course on the team radio. That left a scurry to the checkered flag for the drivers at the end of the session. Lots of 350 kilowatt full attack mode laps coming in to practice for the duels, and unfortunately for Pepe Marti, with the traffic on the circuit, he was caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, and likewise Taylor Barnard at the end of that free practice 2 session. We'll wait and see whether there's any investigations coming from the stewards. Well, this man here, Dan Ticktum, quickest at the end of free practice 2. Nice lap time there for the British driver, and nice to see a smile back on his face.
Yeah, it's important for Dan. He's and what Karun mentioned in this last sector, we can have a look at it. Look at the commitment as he goes in. He's just got so much confidence in front of that car, puts it exactly where he wants, car rotates beautifully, and he's able to get good exits as well.
Seeing there watching on from the FIA weighbridge into the final chicane, just seeing if there's any sort of milliseconds, microseconds left on the table.
For me, it's just all about his confidence in the front end of the car. He knows that he can brake late and get the front end in, rotate the car at the apex, get the exit. It looks really, really nice.
You can see sector 3 is where the lap time has come in, but Porsche powertrains dominating the whole of the circuit. Verline quickest in Sector 1 in the factory car, then the Andretti Porsche of Jake Dennis in Sector 2. And Dan Tickton there quickest in the final sector. Well, that brings an end to FP2 from us here in the commentary box. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you for qualifying very shortly.
No, quali, so, but no, the car's good, so.